and that ultimately we would want to do some things for ourselves. So we would say, well, okay, if we go out to dinner today, let me pick up the check. And the man says, no, I insist. You can never pick up the check. It's always going to be me paying for everything. Well, most people eventually not want to go out with that man anymore. Why?
The matter of giving and receiving.
Because that's right. If in that relationship you feel like you have no power, you're constantly being given to, even though that's great for a little bit, but you have no power. And so my teacher said that this is the way that humans in the beginning, in the primordial state, saw God. That God was primarily giving us everything we ever needed, and we never had to do anything. And so that some of us said, you know, I want to create my own apple pie. I want to create my own reality. I want to create my own everything so that I can feel the pleasure of giving things to myself. And so the first force was created by God as a way of pushing us into a universe where we could create things for ourselves. Now, some people like to say, well, I wasn't in that group. I didn't get consulted on that. But that's the way my teacher explained the propagation of the first force. It's a way to empower ourselves outside of the Godhead so that we could create reality and take advantage of it. We could work, we could get a wage, and give ourselves things that we needed. The next factor that came about is called the B factor. And the B factor is where the paradosis comes in. The A factor separates souls or spirits from God in the spiritual world. And it also caused death ultimately, because the ultimate separation from God is a form of death, in a way. The B factor was created as a counteractant or a counteragent to the A factor. And in the B factor, there is an urge to reunite with the source of all creation, with the Creator himself. It is the force for spiritual evolution. In our higher levels of intelligence, B factor is extremely active. Now, in the ancient times, when the paradosis was taught, they would give the aspirant what they call the spiritual touch. And basically, they would touch you on the forehead. And the master would pass energy into the aspirant. And then the aspirant was given a mantra. But it wasn't really a mantra so much as it was a word. Now, in the Essene accounts of Jesus' baptism, it was essentially a paradosis or an event of the paradosis given by John the Baptist to Jesus himself. It's how Jesus was given the energy of divinity or higher divinity. And in the deeper mystery of that, Jesus was being initiated into a power that would later turn him into the Christ, the B factor, or the immortal factor, let's put it that way. It later immortalized him in a certain way. The X factor is another one of these forces that has a very specific job. The X factor is a force that takes the human form and is generated through there's two places the X factor comes from. It can come through all the areas we talked about, those 5 areas. It comes from the sun. Also, the earth generates a certain amount of X factor. And to be honest, the human body. Generates a certain amount of X factor. A friend of mine who is an astronomer at the University of Arizona talks about his research, and in his research, he did radio astronomy on the human body. If you look at the human body generates the same radiation as a star. So that radio telescopes had to be built far away from cities because human beings, when you point a radio telescope at a city, human beings light up like stars. We put out the same type of radiation.